Mark Rogers TV talking college football playoff rankings, the fourth week of rankings released by the College Football Playoff Committee just hours ago. Let's run down the top 10. I'll let you know what I think as we go through it. Alabama ranked at number 1. So for a second consecutive week, the committee has ranked a one-loss team over a zero-loss team in Florida State. Yes, the Seminoles again, didn't necessarily look impressive in falling behind 16-0 and 23-7 against Miami, at Miami, against a Miami team that is now 6-4, an unranked Miami team. Florida State did pull out the victory once again, so there's got to be something to that. The Noles continue to fall behind decent teams. They're not great teams. They are not marginal teams. They're decent teams. Talking about teams like Louisville and Clemson and now Miami. Good teams. Very good, solid teams. Top 25, top 30, top 40 teams. And they continue to come back, regardless of the circumstance. Florida State, I think at this point in the season, there are enough games played, 10 games played, that you have to credit above anything else winning all the games. So winning all the games for Florida State, I believe, should matter. Okay, let's get back to it. Alabama, yes, they've got the mighty impressive win, defeating Mississippi State, who was number 1 at home 25-20, a game that Alabama led 19-0. They let the Bulldogs get back into it. They were never seriously threatened. Yes, at 19-13, a one-score game, and then Mississippi State took too much time on the last drive to score 25-20. Didn't have any more time to kick the onside and do anything with the football. Okay, Alabama's got a series of decent wins. Most of these teams have decent wins against really solid football teams. For Alabama, that means West Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, Mississippi State. Well, a number of those wins looked much more impressive just a few weeks ago. West Virginia got off to the impressive start. They have lost some games since then. West Virginia not necessarily the team we thought they were a few weeks ago. They have stumbled. Arkansas looking better with a win over LSU at 5-5. Tennessee's a 5-5 team. LSU got off to the rough start. They rebounded. They beat Ole Miss. They looked better against some good football teams, and then they have slipped in recent weeks. Looked really bad against Arkansas. So maybe the LSU win not so good for Alabama, and not so good that they've fallen now out of the top 25. So when it's all said and done, Alabama's only won one game against a top 25 team. That would be current number 4 Mississippi State. Compare that to Oregon at number 2. The Ducks with the same 9-1 record. Oregon has 2 wins, not just over top 25 teams, but over top 10 teams in UCLA at number 9 and over actually a Michigan State team that is just out of the top 10 at number 11. Florida State at number 3. Again, I think the Noles are taking a hit here for unimpressive play, not dominating opponents, but they're winning games. And really, if you look at the schedule, it's not that much worse than some of the teams that they're being compared to. So Florida State, in fact, also has 3 top 25 wins. They have 3 top 25 wins for Oregon, 2 top 25 wins for Florida State over Louisville and over Clemson. Mississippi State drops from 1 to 4. That's what I anticipated. I believe that's fair. Mississippi State was an undefeated team, but unfortunately for the Bulldogs, even though their loss is possibly, not definitely, possibly the best loss in the country, losing at Alabama, the current number 1, now Mississippi State puts themselves in a place of being compared to their other one-loss teams. Before that, it was simply Mississippi State, Florida State, the only 2 undefeated teams for a number of weeks. And Mississippi State playing in the SEC, and specifically the SEC West, with a win over Auburn. That doesn't look so good now. It's still a very quality win, but it looked like a monumental win a few weeks ago. The Texas A&M win at the time was huge, number 6 in the country, Texas A&M. That's not so much of a monumental win now for Mississippi State. So as it stands right now, Mississippi State has defeated just one top 25 team. That's number 14, Auburn. That said, Mississippi State, again, as we talked about last week, places themselves in a predicament to an extent, not going to the SEC championship game, and also now placing themselves on that line with all the other one-loss teams to be compared. So now the Arkansas close win comes into play. The Kentucky close win comes into play. The horrendous Mississippi State, horrendous. Their non-conference schedule is inexcusable. And if we're going to have to continue to compare teams and evaluate play, these teams need to step it up in schedule. And especially I'm talking to Mississippi State and Baylor. They need to be penalized harshly for playing garbage crap non-conference schedules. Play somebody. Even if this college football playoff wasn't in place and we were back in the BCS system, or even if we were still in the poll system, have some pride. Go out and schedule somebody that can play football. Schedule a Power 5. I'm not talking about that you necessarily have to schedule Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Oregon, but schedule somebody decent. Schedule Kansas State. Go schedule Oregon State, or schedule Wisconsin, schedule Penn State, schedule somebody. You're in the Southeast, schedule somebody from the ACC, whether that's even North Carolina or Georgia Tech. I know Mississippi State's played Georgia Tech in recent years. They should schedule more than just one. Everybody should schedule more than one difficult game. This needs to be mandated, and if you've heard me rant about it in the past, we need to go to formula scheduling so the scheduling, non-conference scheduling, is balanced. It's equitable. It's ridiculous. TCU at number 5, Ohio State 6, Baylor 7, Ole Miss 8, UCLA 9, Georgia 10. So I ripped them off quickly just to make the point that my top 3 would be much different. Everything else would be the same. I believe Florida State, an undefeated 10-0 football team, and I'm not taking into account 26 consecutive wins. Those don't count. Those should not be evaluated. That should never be uttered by anyone that Florida State's won 26 straight games. Those were last year. But they have won 10 consecutive games. They have defeated Louisville and Notre Dame. I know that's not a top 25 win anymore, but Notre Dame, win. Louisville, win. Clemson, win. Miami, win. Those are decent teams. And Florida State is the only team in America that can say, out of the Power 5 conference teams, that can say, nobody's beaten us. So Florida State should be number 1. Oregon, with a strength of 3 top 25 wins, compared to Alabama's 1 top 25 win. Even though Oregon's loss is slightly worse than Alabama's, slightly. Ole Miss better than Arizona, but not by much. Both games on the road. Therefore, I place Oregon at 2, Alabama at 3. I have no issue with the rest of it. I believe the committee's right on the beam when we talk Mississippi State at 4, TCU at 5, Ohio State 6, Baylor 7, Ole Miss at 8, UCLA 9, and Georgia at number 10 with wins over Auburn and Clemson. And as I have each and every week, I'm talking about the teams that I believe have even a prayer, a glimpse of going to the college football playoffs. And I believe that that's the line. Michigan State at 8-2 with the loss to Ohio State, not being able to get to the Big Ten championship game unless the Buckeyes lose to Indiana and Michigan. But Michigan State is not going to get to the Big Ten championship. That eliminates their chance of doing anything impressive the last 2 weeks of the season. So these are the 10 teams that have any chance, and obviously the top 7. If the season ended right now, there would be 3 teams with a gripe, regardless of who was left to play in the college football playoff and who was left out. 3 teams would have an issue, being a conference champion most likely with 1 loss, and that would either be TCU, Ohio State, or Baylor, as it stands right now. All right, let's hear from you on the top 25 college football rankings and where we stand with 2 regular season weeks to play, plus the conference championships. Let's talk it up right here on Mark Rogers TV.